I don't want to be here. I didn't think I was ever going to have to be here. The only way I felt like I could get through this is if I said, and I've appreciated that in the obituary, the family chose to say celebration of life, because for Ruth, it's a celebration. All of life was a celebration. That's how she lived her life. And I had to kind of pretend I went to one of her birthday parties today and that I'm getting to say to her what I don't want to be saying about her. Many, many times in the past few years, she kept saying that she's lived too long. She did not expect to live this long. She lived this long. She expected to go earlier. She expected to go closer to when Martin died. And when I became a rabbi, hers was the first call that I got. I remember exactly where I was when I was getting my hair cut, which some people think doesn't happen often enough. But I was getting my hair cut, and I got a call that Martin had died, and I couldn't believe it, and I was kind of stuck. And now this. I didn't believe this either, because I really thought she was going to be here forever. Not that she lived too long, but that she'd be here forever. So if it were her party, I would tell some of these stories. And some of the stories that I have to tell are my stories. And I hope that you have stories to tell also. I can't imagine that you'd be here if you didn't. And I want to remind you that we will not be able to honor someone's life who's 99 years old in the few minutes that we have here together. You have to keep telling the stories. And you'll understand why that's probably the most important thing I'm going to tell you today, that we have to keep telling the stories. But I'm going to tell some stories. And some of the stories, like I said, you may not want to hear because everybody has their own stories. One of my stories is about the thing that she said most often to me had to do with what she thought happens after you die. And I don't like thinking about what happens after you die. In Jewish tradition, if you asked me as the rabbi, I would say, we don't know. I would say that what matters is how you live your life. And that I personally believe that the soul lives on. And I see signs all the time that the soul lives on. I'm going to give you an example. Can you hear that? The beautiful birds singing. Can you see what color the sky is today, even though yesterday we were under tornado watches? That's how I see signs that she's still here. But I didn't want to tell her she was still going to be here, because I think that part of what she liked about the fact that she got to tell the story that Dr. Brill used to teach, that there was nothing that happened, that you live your life and then you die, is because she loved the shock value of saying that. People would freak out and say, oh no, you don't believe that, do you? And they would get very upset with her. And she liked doing that, because part of also what happened is she got to say, this is the Jewish belief. And then she could tell them things about being Jewish, because she was very proud about being Jewish. She was very proud to me about the fact that she may not have been the most Jewish of Jewish, but she loved being Jewish. And she was very proud of that. And she got to tell people about it by the fact that she would say, oh, you know, we're dead and we're done. What? That's so sad. You're not serious, are you? Yes, and that's okay. Because what she knew, the secret is that it's how you live life that matters at that moment. And she lived life to the fullest. So I'll tell you another story that she used to tell a lot. And that was that the guy who was rabbi before me was Rabbi Robinson. And Rabbi Robinson would get to, well, one story about names is, how do you say, every time there was a yortzeit and I had to say Manasseh, she'd call and say, do you know how to say it? This is how you say it. Make sure you pronounce it correctly. And she'd go over it with me every time. I think I know. I said it correctly, didn't I? Manasseh, right? So that was one name story that she would say all the time. And the other name story she would say all the time was the story about Rabbi Robinson. He would say, how did you get a name like Lewis? I mean, Martin was a good Jew from New York. How did you get a name like Lewis? And she would say, well, the same way you got a name like Robinson, probably. And she loved that story, and she'd tell it all the time. And so part of what we're taught is that we don't know what happens after you die. I already told you my secret is that I think that the spirit lives on, and I hope you look for all kinds of messages all the time about how her spirit is still joyful, but that a good name lives on long after the body is gone. And so her name continues to live on. Her stories continue to live on. So I'm going to tell you something else about the Jewish things, and that is that she died on, and I don't know if you know this, so she died on Monday, but on the Jewish calendar, it was Tu B'Shvat, which means it was the birthday of the trees. So I hope that when you see trees at whatever stage they're at, you think about her and how life lives on. Somebody planted these trees long before we got here so that we can enjoy them. Trees have roots, and we certainly got our roots from her. And trees have trunks which show how proud we are, and branches that spread out and feel like embracing arms, leaves that give us shade, and fruit that gives us nourishment. And I will always think of Ruth when I think of the trees. And she died between the time when we read last week's Torah portion and this week's Torah portion, and we are in one of arguably the most awesome moments in all of history, reliving in real time. Last week, we were freed from slavery, and we made it across that sea of reeds, and we sang and we danced. Now, she could sing and dance. And she, to me, will represent miracles. Life, 99 years of life. This week, we get to hear about standing at Sinai and the 10 Commandments. And again, it ties me to how proud she was to be Jewish. But I don't know if you know that the Torah portion is called Yitro, which is about Moses' father-in-law. So it brings me back to the fact that Moses' father-in-law had a lot of names too. So maybe that's the same way you got your name Robinson all over again. I don't know. But I will think about her every year as we celebrate these moments, the anniversary of the most powerful moments in all of history. So my service today is more about how important it is to live your life when you're alive than worry about what happens to you after you're gone. I have a feeling that that's why she lived 99 awesome years, because she cared about how she lived her life. Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit our loved ones gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of their light, some of her light and her warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace. We remember Ruth and join our hearts together to give comfort and strength to her family. Mourning is a time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers and poems, thus linking Mimi's life, Ruth's life, with the millennia-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. If you have a handout, we turn next to the back cover. And this is one you may not need the words for. Please join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies, and thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my long, long life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So did anybody think when it says, prepare us a table before me in the presence of my enemies, the only enemies she had was when she was competing against them at mahjong or cards or something? Those were her enemies. I have another reading here, and I am almost hoping nobody recognizes it, and I'm hoping that everybody recognizes it. It's another translation. It's not Hebrew. It's okay. Don't be afraid. A mother of generations. She is precious in the gifts that she has given to our family. Her children have found trust and truth in these gifts. We follow in patterns that she taught. She's robed in strength and dignity, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. We benefit and learn from her wisdom. May she always be credited for the fruit of her labor and her achievements. May she live on in glory. Now, some people get very mad at me if I try to read A Woman of Valor, but I love that translation, and I needed to read that for her. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity, youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. I like this poem because if it was Tu B'Shvat this week, it means that it was a full moon. Did you see the full moon? So this reminds me of her. There are stars up above. So far away we see their light only long, long after the star is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. Now, I know that a few people may want to say something. I'm going to remind you that if there's something brief that you'd like to say, you are welcome to do that today. That's part of why we have this microphone here. But know that you have always to tell these stories. Keep remembering to tell stories. And I promise you that whether you speak today or not, as soon as we leave, you're going to say, oh, you know what I should have said? Because you're going to be remembering.
I'm going to read this because I'm not that good of a public speaker, but wrote these notes. My mother was the greatest mom a guy could ever have. She gave me life. She gave me a sister. She gave me a true father. And the two of them raised Ellen and me so that we would prosper in life. She enjoyed a full, rich life. Humor and vitality were her hallmark. I've made a few notes, stories that stand out in my mind that I want to share with you. My mom was born right here in Shreveport. The family had close ties to relatives in Georgia, where they visited in the summers. Her big brother, Paul Manasseh, sometimes went along, and he always protected her. And he wasn't too busy thinking, following, playing writing, and even broadcasting about sports. At the tender age of 9, she came down with pneumonia. And at the time, there was no cure, no antibiotics to knock out the infection. So she spent months lying in a hospital bed, her lungs filled with fluid. A drain tube had been inserted through her back, but still the fluid wouldn't drain. Finally, in an act of medical desperation, the hospital staff moved her on a gurney over a bumpy gravel parking lot to get an x-ray. Miraculously, the vibration caused her lungs to clear. And thankfully, she lived to see another day, over 30,000 more, which added up to 1 year shy of a century. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you today. "99 years is a rare gift, and Mom made the most of them. She saw more historic and technological milestones than most people. She lived through the Great Depression, which she and her brother would share an orange once a week. That's all they got. She lived through World War II, the atomic age, moon landings, computers, and digital flip phones, which she hated with a passion. In the end, all she really wanted was to have her old landline back. Throughout most of her adulthood, she moved from city to city, a few years here and a few years there. And fortunately, she was blessed with incredible skills, able to make friends at any place, anytime. She was great at parties, mixing in with everyone and mixing their drinks as well. Everyone agreed that she had a career. She could have had a career as a professional party guest. Over the years, she lived in Shreveport, Dallas, Atlanta, Louisville, Miami, Houston, and New Orleans, for a total of 26 houses that I lived in with her. But as big brother, I got to live in more than you, Helen. Her travels included China, Western Europe, Mexico, the Caribbean, and other exotic places. I remember one family trip to Juarez. We parked on the U.S. side and walked in. Mother and Ellen were dressed in colorful Mexican outfits. And being summertime, Mom's naturally dark complexion was darker than ever. When our day of fun was done, we crossed back over the bridge. Suddenly, we stopped, realizing Mother was being held back by Border Patrol. The guards thought she was a Mexican citizen. But in the end, we made it home safely. Many years later, in 1982, Mom and my wife, Sue, founded Frame and Place and Gallery in New Orleans, picture frame shop. And after their initial training, which they did in Houston, they returned to finally open the store. On the very first day at 10 a.m. sharp, a car pulled up in front of the store. With a stark look of absolute terror, they stared at each other and simultaneously said, "I hope they're not coming in here." 40 years later, Frame and Place now belongs to my son-in-law, Colin. And recently, as Mom started her decline, Colin called her to say she was the only grandmother he never had. She will be certainly missed. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Mother's card game skills. She rivaled the best of them, and she spent a lifetime, as you've heard, playing canasta, bridge, and poker, and even every version of solitaire. And she wasn't so bad at mahjong either. I think those games were a big reason why she stayed so sharp up until her final days. I'm so grateful for her strength and wit. She was a great mom. Starting out as a single mother for 4 years, somehow she successfully guided me through that period until Martin came along. Together they built a strong family, and now she will rest right next to him, right here for eternity. I will miss her more than words can say. I love you, Mom.
I think that captured it for now. I want you to look around and see who else is here and share stories with each other, please. Take a moment of silence to remember. And the child asked, "Tell me of life." And the sage answered, "Life, my child, is a mystery. We do not ask to be born, nor do we even understand the meaning of birth, of creation. We grow and we experience life's pleasures and pains. We love, and slowly, oh so slowly, we come to realize that we have become, that we are. At that moment, we humble ourselves before the mystery of life and quietly say, though I knew not, I have been granted the most precious gift of all, the gift of life." And the child asked, "Tell me of death." And the sage answered, "Death, my child, is a mystery. It is the inevitable return of the gift of life, the gift which came free to us. We live as the trustee of that mysterious being, of that unexplainable becoming. Yes, you and I are but the trustees of life. We nurture it, we delight in it, we give of it to others, and at the appointed time we sadly, yet with pride, return it from whence it came. The beauty, my child, is that we are. What we have become remains long after the gift has been returned. It remains as a precious keepsake with our loved ones who live on. Early or late, we must answer the summons to return to the source of being, for we lose our hold on life when our time has come, as the leaf falls from the bough when its day is done. The deeds of the righteous enrich us all, as the fallen leaf enriches the soil beneath. The dust returns to the earth, the spirit lives on with God. Like the stars by day, our beloved dead are not seen by mortal eyes. They shine on forever. Theirs is eternal peace. Let us be thankful for the companionship that continues in a love stronger than death. Sanctifying the name of God, we honor Ruth's memory. Vose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'himru amen. Yahase Shalom, Yahase Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yahase Shalom, Yahase Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yahase Shalom, Yahase Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yahase Shalom, Yahase Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yahase Shalom, Yahase Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Vose Shalom Dibroma, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, V'hinu Amen. Eli, Eli, Shelo Yigamer Le'olam, B'chol v'hayam, Rishru Shel Hamayim, Berak HaShamayim, Tfilat Ha'adam, Achor v'hayam, Rishru Shel Hamayim, Berak HaShamayim, Tfilat Ha'adam. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heaven, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heaven, the prayer of the heart. Would the family please rise? I have one prayer I say in Hebrew, but I will translate it right after. It sends her soul on its next journey. Did you hear that, Ruth? El maleh rachamim shochen bamromim, hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, הם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזכירים את נשמת רות בת אסקר ומיני שהלכה לעולמה. בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצורו בצור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן. May the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace and sadness the way of all things. May Ruth's memory be for us a blessing, and may we never let the light of her love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all her worthy and righteous deeds, that her memory be forever bound up in the bond of life. God is our source and our destination, our beginning and end. May Ruth's death awaken to us to this truth, that the bond of love we shared and share not be severed in sorrow. May she rest in peace, and together we say, Amen. May the love and eternal connection of our souls give us strength as we turn to recite the words hallowed by time. Sanctifying the name of God, we honor Ruth's memory with the words of the mourner's Kaddish, which is on the inside of your handout. You'll see it exists in the Aramaic, the Hebrew letters, but there's a transliteration as well, and a translation as well. This prayer is not one about death, it's one about being grateful for having had her with us in life. If you are grateful to God for having had Ruth in your life, I invite you to join the mourners with me in saying the words of the Kaddish together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chaye chon u'v'yom echon u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe shemei Rabbah mevarach la'alam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata b'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. And as we sang before, it says, may the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all the world, to which we say, Amen. Al mekoma tavo b'shalom. May Ruth come to her eternal home in peace. In Jewish tradition, the next thing we do is we shovel dirt on the grave. It is a mitzvah. It is a good deed. It's a righteous act, which we do without any hope of reward. With this act, we take on the responsibility of caring for our loved one until the very end. Our loved ones deserve to be buried by kind hands, by knowing hands, by sorrowful hands, by loving hands. You are invited to participate in this mitzvah. It's a painful act, however, one born of love and compassion for those who have meant so much to us. Now, we've got this little pile of dirt here, because the dirt is not dirt today. It rained a lot yesterday. The dirt is giant clump, heavy stuff. But the way it could work is the first shovelful that you take is upside down, because it is a very ineffective shovelful, except that our Red River dirt here is clumping to it. And then afterwards, you can take another few shovelfuls, but when you're finished, you put it back in the ground or leave it leaning down. You don't hand it to anybody else, because each person takes on this responsibility on their own. But I also have dirt from Israel. She always wanted to go. It was one of a few things in life in her 99 years she didn't get to do. So we can take some dirt and put it on her if you'd rather do that, or in addition to. Not everyone is obligated, and you are welcome to stay even after the service is over, which will be shortly after we have at least the family put dirt on the grave. We also, by the way, have stones. If you have people here that you are remembering who are already buried here, the Jewish tradition is we leave a stone on their site. So you are welcome to do that as well.
Pretty much for everybody. Quite a while.
I know. She's it's gonna be a girl.
He doesn't remember that. Well, I know he knows that, but
Don't walk out that way. Did you want to walk away? There's Ellen. It was not Ellen. Listen, he's wonderful. He's wonderful. Yeah.